Welcome to Lyve Talks, a podcast by Lyve, a tech and logistics company headquartered in Abu Dhabi. On Lyve Talks, we tackle fintech, logistics, business, and best practices in the workplace. I'm Karim Bakhache, the VP of Strategy at Lyve Global, and I will be your host.
The future is all about HR analytics. If something we have understood as well through this pandemic, that resiliency is a key.
When you got hired and then you go into COVID-19, I mean, you're completely disconnected.
The world has changed, we changed, and the way we perceive and look at space and time has also changed. People want freedom, people want flexibility, and that calls for trust.
McKinsey has done a research not long ago. It says across multiple countries, big countries like US, UK, and Europe, also in Eastern Asia, more than 40% of employees are ready to leave their organization within the next 6 months.
Yeah, salary is important, benefits are important, but against the perception that money is the most important factor in making people happy, there are so many other things that people want today, and that's why they're leaving their job.
Welcome to a new episode of Lyve Talks. Today, we are going to be discussing a very important topic and very exciting one for myself. We are going to be discussing how COVID-19 has changed the workplace and what are companies doing to address this as we are slowly recovering and coming back to a new norm.
Yeah. Good morning, Karim. Sabah al-khair, and thank you for having me today. I'm also equally excited to be discussing such a topic which relates to everyone. I am an HR and workplace consultant that specializes in the space of employee engagement and happiness. I started my career in Dubai in 2004 in HR line management. So I did a typical HR job of hiring people, recruiting people, performance management, succession planning, and so forth. And after 10 years in the HR line management, I moved into the HR consultancy. I worked with Hewitt, a multinational consultancy, as an HR consultant, where I helped many organizations in the region to work on their leadership practices and employee engagement initiatives. From there, I moved to a company called Great Place to Work, which was one of my most interesting experiences because I had the chance to work with many organizations in the UAE and in the rest of the Middle East to improve their workplace culture, to give people a better workplace experience. I was lucky to be working with the Minister of Happiness in the UAE on happiness and positivity projects. I'm today an advisor for the Dubai police as well on happiness and positivity practices. So this is what I do every day. This is my passion. I wake up every morning wanting to help people to have a better workplace experience and eventually have a better life experience.
Great. Good to have you on board. To give a bit of context of, to the people who are listening. Mm-hmm. So COVID-19 obviously has been first a very big humanitarian catastrophe on the world. Yeah. But what people didn't also realize that it had a tremendous impact on workplace in organizations. Mm-hmm. People who lost, connection with their employers, and employees who lost connections between themselves. I mean, I can look back at myself when I was working in my previous job, and we went from being completely immersed of team work, a lot of events and everything, and then we went to zero. Mm-hmm. And that had a very big impact on a lot of people, some people more than others, mm-hmm. but most importantly, people lost the connection.
Yes.
So now we're slowly getting out of COVID, some places faster than others, like here in the UAE. So what are companies doing now? Like, what are some of the practices that companies are doing to regain that connection, maybe between them and the employees and also between the employees?
First of all, I would like to highlight again the impact and the scope of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the world, and specifically on the workplace culture and on businesses in the world and in the region. I like a sentence by a Harvard Business School professor where he said, "The world has changed, we changed, and the way we perceive and look at space and time has also changed." So a fact, yes, it has impacted workplaces around the world. It has impacted the way people feel and think about work. And as you said, as we're recovering now very slowly, that huge impact has a lot of, I would say, challenges. That's the best way to put it. That organizations has to consider in order to move beyond the pandemic. So back to your questions, what are organizations doing to build that connection? So we've been away for 2 years working remotely. We've been used to be in the office on an average from 9 to 6, 9 to 5, and then suddenly we're at home, we're behind the screens. So the first thing that we have experienced as professionals, that disconnection with our work colleagues. If you don't see someone for more than like a month or two, then the relationship will eventually fizzle. So that, and also if you don't see your manager who you're used to see every day in the office, go to meetings with, travel with, that connection, that human connection is being broken. So how are we going to address this? The answer is still something that we're exploring as HR professionals and as consultants. Many organizations are doing a lot of research and studies in order to understand what do people want now when coming back to the office. Many are doing things assuming, okay, people want parties and dinners and get-togethers and after-office drinks, but then it's not helping. People are still disconnected. So it differs from an organization to another, but if I want to advise organizations to do something now to help that problem, is to run a lot of research and analysis and have a data-driven approach to address the challenge, which basically means ask your employees what are they looking for today and try to customize the solution based on what your group of people are looking for today. For example, in certain organizations, some people still prefer to work remotely and you're calling them to come back to office. So have that discussion and understand what best work conditions can work for my team in different departments, in different regions, because there is no department like the other, there's no region like the other. So, and connection, communication. The more you connect and communicate with your people, the more you understand what are they going through. Of course, the most dear word to my heart and in my profession is empathy. So a lot of empathy is needed now in order to understand and figure out what do people feel today. How can we empathize and connect with them in order to understand how we can address the issue. So if I come today as a consultant and tell you, Karim, there's this magic solution that will work for every organization and will help building bridges again, I'm not going to be really accurate. What I would advise, understand what works for your organization by collecting as much data as you can and take a step backward as an HR professional. Look into the root cause of why people are feeling the way they're feeling today and address that. Does that make sense to you?
It does. I'm just trying to relate to also what happened during the pandemic when some organizations tried to keep that connection alive through, virtual meetings, virtual coffees, they call them, dinners, events, but still nothing worked. Now, once people went back to the office, you can sense that there was different type of people. Some people were so happy to come back. They literally reconnected with the employees because they're people that naturally want to be surrounded with other people. Others struggled a lot because they got used to not being connected. Maybe their personality is different. So that goes back to your point. I mean, it's very different from organization, but also different from each employee.
Exactly.
And I remember they ran some surveys they used to run these weekly and monthly surveys to understand, to get a pulse, like who's not depressed, but really challenged in this situation, who's not, what's happening. We even had a name for the people who got hired during the pandemic. We call them the COVID-19 batch, because these are the ones that suffered the most.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When you got hired and then you go into COVID-19, I mean, you're completely disconnected.
Yes.
And a lot of them left after that, and we'll talk about this later because it's important. But going back to your point, so HR organizations or organizations need to understand the specificities of each of their employees, the departments, to make sure that whatever they're doing is not a standard one response to everyone.
Exactly.
Which is what organizations tend to do.
Yes.
Is it money? Let's throw money at everyone. Is it about parties? Let's do a party. But then they forget that it's now very specific to each employee.
Exactly. Because I speak a lot to leaders, and I speak a lot to people and employees, and I collect feedback. So I remember some of the people's feedback. They're like, when we came back to office, they took us to this team building exercise, and they expected us to jump and be happy and, a typical gamification team building. But then they said, but we were not okay with each other. So how do you expect me to have fun with my colleague outside my office if I'm really not in good terms with him or her inside the office? So work on relationships, strengthen relationships, and then go have fun. Because if I don't like you today, Karim, I would not really enjoy having coffee with you outside, right?
Right, of course, of course. So maybe on the opposite side, what companies should let go now? Because there's certain things probably that we used to do pre-pandemic. We try to continue doing during pandemic because organizations tend to have difficulty to change. So what should organizations do now and let go?
Yes, very good question, because I think I'm one of the people, as an HR consultant and a workplace culture expert, there's one side of me that was happy, as bad as that sounds, that the COVID pandemic hit the workplace and the world, because there's one upside for it, that it helped people to understand what's really important for them. As I told you before, the way we see work, the way we see the value of work is completely different. And it made a lot of people aware that my well-being is important, the way I use my time is important, the value of my work and the sense of meaning is important. We all paused, so that pause that we went through as human beings gave us the space and the time to think, what do I really want to do? Am I really happy in this organization? Do I really want to spend 2 hours commuting to the office today, every day, and then be in the office for another 8 minutes and miss my family time, my personal time? So we all are more aware as people of what we want and what we don't want, which makes it a bit challenging for HR professionals and leaders. So that's why, if they want to let go of things, let go of the very typical inherited HR practices of time in, time out, micromanagement. How did you spend your day to day? People want freedom. People want flexibility. And that calls for trust. So what was really dominant in workplaces in the region here is the absence of trust in the workplace. Even though every company's value has trust and credibility on their walls, on their website, but in relationships between people and managers, there was no trust. So people had to lie to take sick leaves or not take sick leaves. People had to, because there is no trust. So if anything you have to let go is loosening that non-trust of people, and try to trust people more, and have your practices and policies speak the human language and focus more on caring on the human element. As dreamy and cliche as that sounds, it actually works, because people today value organizations that look after them as human beings, as give them space and time to look after their mental and physical well-being, in addition to having organization that gives them the right package, the right benefits, and so forth. So you're working today as HR professionals and leaders with a population that is more aware, that is more informed, and who is awakened to what's important in life. So let go of many practices I can think of, like that HR specifically do, and I always post about, like, if you still ask people to, for example, give you a proof of your last salary in a job interview, that's something that definitely should go. If you still ask people for proof of half-day sick leave, oh, you need to give me a sick leave form for that day, try to let that go. Try to trust people more, because if you trust people more, it's amazing how you would see their productivity goes higher and their impact on the business goes higher, which will reflect on your bottom line, your revenues, and your customer happiness.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of research that has been done on the direct relationship between like employee engagement and bottom line performance. Everything within an organization is directly linked to the well-being and the engagement and the trust that you've been talking about, which is quite important. You're absolutely right. Like when you lose trust with your employer, you just become more transactional.
Yes.
And that becomes more cumbersome on yourself. More day after day, you just feel the weight and then you just let go. Because that's what usually happens. Mm-hmm. Which maybe bring me to the second topic that I wanted to discuss with you. This is something that everybody's been talking about, this whole concept of great resignation or great attrition, sometimes they call it. And the stats are quite staggering.
Yes.
They've done, McKinsey has done a research not long ago. It says across multiple countries, big countries like US, UK, in Europe, also in Eastern Asia, more than 40% of employees are ready to leave their organization within the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Something that was maybe unimaginable before the COVID had just happened. And now everybody's struggling to understand what to do. And more interestingly, and I'm a victim of this stat, is around 36% of the people that actually left did not have another job, which means it was not about monetary or another job or something else that was waiting for them, but it was a buildup of different issues or challenges that they faced. How big is this thing? And should we worry here in the region? Because there's not much that has been talked here. Sometimes they mention it, but I can definitely say from my experience that I know a lot of people that left and changed their work. So it definitely is here. But how big is this a problem or a challenge?
I would say it's huge. It's really big and massive. And if you look into data and research results from around the world, the numbers are quite scary. We're talking about 4 million people leaving their jobs on average in the US from April last year, 2021. There's a lot of research and studies from big consultancies that supports that. So there's definitely something that is worth considering and getting ready for. And as many studies explained, that's a phenomena that we have not experienced before in the workplace culture space. And if it's coming to the region, definitely it is. The only reason we don't see it in the region, or we're not still talking about it, is that we don't have enough data. So it is scary, it's big. And I was reading a very recent article, a UAE-based paper, that said more than 56 people that they surveyed are looking to change their jobs in 2022. So what does that mean to business? It's alarming because the higher your turnover, the higher is your cost, the higher is your impact, is the impact on the bottom line again, on the revenue, on the customer happiness, on the quality of products, on the turnaround time. So if you don't really care about people, I think now it's really for you, it's the time for you to care now, because it's going to impact your business. So, what was your question again?
How concerned should we be, and most importantly, what employers should do? I mean, like anyone, is concerned, right? If you have employees that have been around for a while and suddenly they leave, they take knowledge out, like you said, you lose performance, you lose customer, you lose a lot of things. So what should we do?
Very good question. So first of all, we need to understand why people are leaving. So let's start with the basics. First, we measure our turnover rates. HR professionals know how to do that. We come to see our turnover rates. We sit and say, okay, let's discover why our turnover rates are as high, or as I'm sure most of them are high, or the way it is now. So we need to run more analysis on the root cause. We need to identify and quantify the impact and the scope of the problem. So the more you work on quantifying the problem and its scope, the more it will be easier for you to resolve it and address it. So first of all, try to understand what's making people leave. Do a research, a survey, a study, ask people, focus groups, whatever form of collecting data from people, work on it in order to identify certain trends. For example, female employees are leaving my organizations because my policies are not very female friendly. People in certain location, I would say like Abu Dhabi, just as an example, are leaving because of the commute. So as soon as I do the research, identify the trends, I would need to sit down and also, again, a data-driven approach to address the challenge and say, I need to look after this group of people in this geography, in this line of product, and address it accordingly. Take it one step at a time. Try to, again, I will go to my first point, address the issues that pertains to your own organization. Don't get distracted by what some consultants would say. Consultants are amazing. I'm one. You were one before. But sometimes consultants tend to go to one size fits all.
Of course.
But we all know that doesn't work. So the best advice is I can give today is just customize your action plan based on the challenges you face. And talk to your people, communicate, advise and train your leaders today, because I keep saying HR, and I think HR is a victim here, because we often tend to relate every people issue or every workplace culture issue to HR.
Correct.
However, HR is just this small team sitting in the back office trying to manage everything. But HR is actually within every department. Each leader in the business today is an HR leader. So every person is an HR person, other than the people who officially hold the HR title. So try to train and educate your leaders about their people management role, about their HR role. How often do I need to sit with my team members, with my colleagues, and ask them, how are you doing? What do you need? How can I help you? So back to empathy. Empathize as a leader. Try to communicate. Show vulnerability, because when people see you vulnerable, they will also be motivated to show their weaknesses or what they're looking for. Because sometimes the solution is one conversation away, as simple as it sounds. But we often tend to take the excuse of we're busy, we're trying to manage the business, we've been suffering during COVID, so we forget the human element. So talk to your people, communicate, have a very, again, data-driven approach, customized plan. This is what I need to do in the next 3 months, 6 months, and this is how I can somehow manage the Great Resignation.
So talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, a lot of organizations took this opportunity to hire people across the world, right? People saw this chance of saying, okay, if things are working remotely, what if I get this person in Sweden? What about I get the other person in the US? And that other person from Jordan or any other country in the world. And so organization then started to have these very diverse people that are completely detached from where the organization is headquartered. And we at Lyve, we've done this. We have people that are sitting in so many countries, 11 or 12 if I'm not mistaken, that are sitting across the world, and I don't know if they feel engaged or detached or not. But what do you recommend for these organizations to do, like us?
It's true, it can be very challenging, especially that these people joined the organization during the pandemic, so they didn't even have the chance to meet in person and build that connection for it to go away. But still, we can make a little improvement on that side by connecting people on one common purpose. So what's the value, what's the purpose of your organization? And I love Simon Sinek start with why, because I believe what connects people at the first place is that common purpose and common value, that we're all working towards the same objective. So try to, again, communicate and connect with these people as much as you can, again, with the possible technologies that is available, which is Zoom calls in this place, and or whatever softwares do you use. So try to talk to these people more, try to connect, get leaders to also speak to them more, understand what is working and what's not working for them. Do they prefer working certain hours? For example, if someone is in a different region and work is forcing them or asking them to wake up a little bit earlier or stay a bit later, ask if that's a challenge, or and if not, what's a challenge in that case. So the more you understand and you connect with these people, the more you get to know them better, and the more you will be able to support them. And going back to the common purpose and sense of meaning, people around the world will connect if they believe that they have a common value or a sense of meaning. So I may not be connected today with my co-workers and will not be in the same workspace, but if we connected towards one goal and we have one value that connects us all, and we see that value being practiced in the way we do work, then it's gonna help in making them more connected and more attached to the business.
Do we need to foresee a revolution now in HR? It's like looking at this Great Resignation, the COVID-19 impact, the connections that's being lost. It seems to be overwhelming for any organization, small, big. It's a lot. So do we see that HR has to completely revolutionize what they're doing?
Yes.
So it's a yes about what do they need to do now? So what is some of the things that you think they should be doing?
A lot of things. I'll focus on like key important things, but I think HR is one of these professions or industries that did not evolve as all the different functions, let's say marketing or finance or tech. The way HR is being looked at and done is in many aspects is very similar to how it was done right after the Industrial Revolution. And sometimes it frustrates me as a consultant, because I see all these practices that we're doing because we get used to doing it. We don't pause and ask ourselves, does it really work? Is it what really people want? So if we're gonna talk about HR and how they need to evolve and change, I would highly advise that we take a step back and we have a very honest look into our HR policies and practices, and what does not make sense, just fight for it to go away. Like the way we interview people. I think it's a one standard approach that doesn't make sense, that doesn't help you to find the right person, but we still do it because we train to do it. And one of the challenges as well in many organizations, especially here in the region, and I'm sure, Karim, you have noticed that while being a consultant, HR jobs in the region, especially in the government sector, were jobs that were kept for people who didn't like any other job, send them to HR. So any person who did not like marketing or finance or did not make it in these, send them to HR, thinking that HR is admin or HR is personnel, which we need to remove away, because HR is not administration, HR is not just personnel. HR is a key strategic unit and function that can be the most important function or department in your organization, because we keep saying people is our most important asset. But are we really treating people and HR like we think people is our most important asset? So invest in educating HR people. Invest in trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. So anything that is not trust-driven, pause and ask, how can I change that policy and practice and make it more agile, more resilient? Because if something we have understood as well through this pandemic, that resiliency is a key. And you cannot just say because HR said so or because the policy said so. You have to be more resilient and more flexible in order to evolve and move forward. So the answer is yes, HR has to change. We need to start implementing more well-being programs, something which was not on the HR agenda. It was there again, but it was more of ticking a box. Okay, let's attend a yoga session and we have yoga after office every week, and they think, oh, that's well-being. That's not well-being. So try to have, again, a very well thought of approach to what well-being means to our people, and do it authentically. Make people feel that you're doing things because you really care about them. Many organizations do a lot of things and think having a recreation area or a yoga class or a free fruits and fruits in the morning or free breakfast gonna make people happy. It's nice to have, but it's not going to make your people happy. Don't invest your money in the wrong venues that would lead to happiness. These things are amazing. I would love to work for a company that gives me free breakfast, honestly. But after that free breakfast, I want to go see a manager or a line that I like, that I connect with, that I can tell him or her about my personal and non-personal issues, and they will support me. So remove that very transactional, as you said, hat, and try to put more more connection and more humane hat, and care more about your people. I'm a very big advocate of caring and being connected and being humane, and sometimes I get challenged a lot by leaders and saying, this is a workplace, we're here to make money. But trust me, if you care about people and if you make them feel that you care about them, the impact on your business is going to be much higher than any marketing campaign you can go through.
So the other question that we had when you talked about HR revolution and trying to put much more effort now based on what's happened, how does small organizations like ourselves, Lyve, what can we do, and what can we do from the resource perspective that now we need, right? Because I'm assuming that anything that is required now needs more resource. You need more firepower within HR to be able to deal with that. This is easy for bigger corporations. They can spend the money, they have big budgets, they'll throw at it whatever it needs to make sure that people are retained and people are happy. What about the small organizations? What can they do? Because at the end, they're also limited in terms of what they can do based on whatever stage they're at.
Which we understand, definitely, because there are budget constraints. Maybe it's not the time for us to hire more people. But saying that we need more of HR doesn't typically mean we need more HR people. It's just we need more of an HR focus and people focus from the top. So again, I will go back. The CEO is an HR person. The COO is an HR person. The marketing director is an HR person. And also what you can do as a small organization, if you have that vision and understanding of the importance of people, and you really want to make a change, then involve everyone in these HR practices or activities. Give them the sense of responsibility and accountability of managing people and leading the culture of the organization. Because a culture it's very difficult to identify a culture or define a culture, or what is a culture, or how we can create a culture. And if I hire 15 HR people in a small organization, that does not mean it will be easier for me to create a great workplace culture. The trick is maybe with one very professional HR person who has the experience and the know-how and a small team, but then having the right HR solutions in place is what you need to invest in, and having the right technology in place. The future is all about HR analytics, so invest in these things more than you invest just in adding more HR people. Have the right HR people and invest in more practices and solutions to the rest of the team. if that makes sense.
No, it does perfectly sense. I mean, we don't need to go the traditional way of hiring more people.
Yes.
There are different ways, even for any size of the company, to deal with that in more innovative ways.
Yes. And what I always advise my clients, let's move away from human resources and personnel and manpower and workforce, all these names that we call our people. It's people. Call it the people department. And anyone who has interest in people can be part of the people department. And have it in a way that you can actually promote and recognize and appreciate your marketing person or your salesperson if they contribute to the people function in the organization. Hire people who are chief happiness officers or chief engagement officers, chief empathy officers. Just let go of recruitment manager, performance, and try to understand what's going to reflect on the culture today. Empathy or a yoga class, empathy or an increase in salary. Salary is important, benefits are important, but against the perception that money is the most important factor in making people happy, there are so many other things that people want today, and that's why they're leaving their job.
Well,
a lot to say. I'm sorry. I'm trying to squeeze them.
No, but this is a very important conversation. I'm sure it's relevant to everyone in every organization, small, big, in any stage of their growth. But again, thank you for giving us the time to come today. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast, and happy to have more conversation on this important topic. So that was it for today. Thank you everyone for joining this new show. And if you want to hear more about us, you can join. You can find the links on the website or on any of the podcast platform. Thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you, Karim.